What's up peeps, welcome back to Rebranding Safety. Today we're talking all about confined space. Let's jump into the intro and to tell you some more.
Rebranding Safety.
What's up peeps, welcome back to Rebranding Safety. Rebranding Safety is the YouTube channel and podcast doing exactly what it says on the tin. We're here to change the perception of health and safety. We do that right here on YouTube and we do that over on the podcast as well. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the bell and all those magical algorithm buttony things. Let's jump into today's conversation around confined space then. But before we do that, just a quick message from Paradigm Human Performance, who are the sponsors of Rebranding Safety, and more specifically their HSE subscription service. More from them later on. Okay, so confined space. What the hell is confined space? I'm currently in the studio and the door's locked and the camera's blocking my way out. Is that a confined space? What's the actual definition of a confined space? So the confined space regulations define a confined space as any place including a chamber, tank, vat, silo, pit, trench, pipe, sewer, flue, well, or other similar space in which by virtue of its enclosed nature there arises a reasonably foreseeable specified risk. And unfortunately confined spaces are commonly fatal accidents. When they go wrong, they don't go wrong well. These are serious things. So what's a foreseeable risk then? Because that's what we need to work out if it is a confined space. You know, if it's in that list of things, then that's pretty easy. We've worked that out. But what if it's a other space that's quite similar to that has a foreseeable risk? Well, a foreseeable risk might be something that contains a potentially hazardous environment or substance, like a lack of oxygen, for example. That could be something like a drain in a storage vessel or a wood pellet store that can quite easily produce carbon dioxide. Things like fruit stores are designed to be deficient of oxygen. It could be something where there's a risk of a fire or an explosion. Things where there's a danger of engulfment or entrapment. So these are things like silos, like grain silos, things where it's like a sand or a fine grain that can essentially drown you. A risk of drowning from a liquid, a risk from increased body temperature, things where you might be likely entrapped in there and it increases your body temperature. This might be something like a massive industrial cooker, for example. So what are the main pieces of legislation for confined space? Well, because of the nature of a confined space is all of those risks we just kind of mentioned within a confined space. There's actually quite a lot of legislation that touches on confined space. There's obviously the confined space regulations, so the main piece of legislation covering confined space, obviously. But you've also got COSH, the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health, DESIR, Dangerous Substances and Explosives Atmosphere Regulations, obviously the Health and Safety at Work Act and the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations, and RIDDOR falls into it as well for the requirement of reporting incidents and accidents. So what are your requirements within those legislation then? Well, similarly to working at height, the first thing is to avoid working in a confined space altogether. And if you can't do that and it's necessary for you to enter the confined space, then it must be under a safe system of work. That could be a permit to work, that could be a wider safe system of work that includes a permit to work, a risk assessment, a policy, procedure, and other admin safety that helps you influence the operational safety. So this is likely to include the provision of appropriate equipment, the relevant isolation of that confined space, and anything in there that could create that dangerous atmosphere. So remember the fire, the explosive atmosphere, maybe the grain or anything like that, the increased body temperature, etc. So the isolation of those points. And also I'd expect it to include the training of staff, the competence and the training. So for me, competence is a wider piece, and just including the training isn't enough, in my opinion. So I would have the competence in there as well. I'd expect to see within this safe systems work an emergency plan, and this emergency plan should cover several things. So for example, the emergency plan would be relative to the confined space, but also if that person just became ill within that confined space. So for example, they've not had anything to drink all day and they're just dehydrated, everything's gone to plan and everything's isolated, but they just got really dehydrated and collapsed, for example, which is really easy done. How do you rescue them, as well as the plan for accidental influx of the hazard, so the fire, the heat, the grain, anything like that, the deficient oxygen, anything like that, a build-up of a chemical in the air, of a gas that's kind of asphyxiated them. Plan for your emergency plan. How are you going to fail and how are you going to rescue that person? How are you going to fail safely, so to speak? But also your emergency plan should include the safety of the rescuers. So do they have the breathing apparatus? How do they test the air before they go in if they need to test the air? How do you not get the horror stories, which are unfortunately absolutely rife, of people going in to rescue somebody from a confined space and being found in the exact same situation of the person they went to rescue? And the stories are just horrific. I'd expect your plan to also consider things like first aid and resuscitation. Remember what we said, 9 times out of 10, confined space results in a fatal accident. So your safe system of work should reflect that, and it should plan for that and plan how to avoid it. Don't take this for granted. Take this really seriously. This safe system of work is how you fail safely. Okay, so my top tips on additional things on top of the summary of your basic requirements today. But before we jump into that, just a quick word about our sponsor. Paradigm Human Performance HSE subscription service is the perfect tool for those small and medium-sized enterprises, those people that are absolutely spinning all the plates, juggling all the balls all the time, and really struggling. Paradigm Human Performance has just got a global vision to learn, to help and support people and make worker safety the DNA of organizations. They don't believe anyone should be hurt at work, and this is a solution as part of their wider offering. The HSE subscription service starts at £99 a month, and it's regulatory, legal and industry compliance, but it's through the lens of a human and organizational performance expert. So this is already decluttered, and their visions, their values and just how they operate is absolutely in line with Rebranding Safety. So if you like our content, you will like Paradigm Human Performance's work. I think they're amazing. I wouldn't let them sponsor this channel if they weren't. So I'll put all their details in the description below. I've also put their website in the description below, and go and check out their webinar series. Every Thursday at 2 p.m. UK time is a learning organisation webinar. So you can go and check out the team at Paradigm before you purchase anything from them. So you get a feel from them, you can get to know them, you can see their expertise and their competence before you press the button. Okay, let's jump into my top tips then. As per always, I think it's really powerful to highlight the point of no return. You could do this via your risk assessment process, but highlighting the point of no return. So for example, if it was a gas or an oxygen deficient environment and you were climbing down into that oxygen deficient environment, where is the line? Where's the line where that will start? And at that point, you put a sign there saying, this is the point of no return. Have you got everything you need? Is your respirator ready? And blah, blah, blah. And then you can work your way back from that point and implement your critical control points. I think the point of no return and your critical control points is absolutely a perfect way to manage pretty much any risk, but more importantly, high risk tasks such as confined space. You're really getting an understanding of what confined spaces are in your business. Understand where they are as part of your risk assessment and identify them. My advice here would not be to go over the top. Remember that it has to be with a foreseeable risk. It's not just a small area, it's a foreseeable risk. So if you've got a small area, it's not just because it's a small area, it's a confined space. A lot of people can get confused there and go, well, that crawl tunnel there, that's a confined space because it's really tight. To a point, maybe, yeah, but there's not a foreseeable risk. There's not anything that's going to drown you or anything. Well, what if he becomes what if he just collapses? Okay, well, if you're worried about that, then manage that risk, but it's probably not the same as going down into a grain silo or something like that, because that then creates a feeling in their brain that you're not taking it seriously, you're over the top, it's health and safety gone mad. So pick out the real confined spaces where the real risks are, and a full-blown system of management there. And then the ones that are just tight, small spaces, you're still managing that risk, but it's proportionate to the risk. When you're looking at a permit to work system, because it's pretty much inevitable you're going to have a permit to work system in this process, do it properly. This is not just a tick box exercise. A permit to work process is a real point of no return process. Here's a point of no return. We're going to work our way back. Have we done this? Yes. Do we know we've done that? Yes. We got our peer checks. We're talking to each other. We're a pre-job brief, so to speak. Normally, when my experience of permit to work, it's just become this bureaucratic process that deliver no value. If you're having a permit to work, make sure it's delivered value. Really test it and stress test it. Push it to its nth degree and see if it works. If it doesn't work, talk to your team, work out how we get this to work. Employee engagement is vital. Work with the people that are doing this day in, day out, because they're the experts. Okay peeps, I hope you've enjoyed this video. That was confined space, the basics, I suppose, with my top tips. Don't forget to go check out Paradigm Human Performance and their webinar as well, the Learning Organisation webinar every Thursday at 2 p.m. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next week. Safe.